Bonsoir à tous. Bienvenue à la cérémonie de prix de l'OIV 2020.
To the 2020 OIV Award ceremony. The year 2020 is quite a particular year. It is particular because of the situation we are experiencing today, but it's also a very important date in the history of the OIV. On the 11th of December, 1936 years after the creation of the International Wine Office, the 13 member countries decided to create the OIV Awards as a permanent competition. Today, again, it continues to be the most important international competition on vine and wine works. It is a tribute to the value and the importance of publications in the global wine sector. The International Organization of Vine and Wine is celebrating this 2020 awards with the greatest respect for the values that had been promoted by the committee of the International Wine Office in the 1930s. The 2020 OIV Award Jury has awarded 19 prizes and 10 special mentions to 29 published books and to 3 websites. These prizes are in the scientific, technical, literary, historical, and artistic categories. In addition to that, 4 publishing houses have received the recognition, the acknowledgement of the OIV for their editorial work. Now, while the OIV Awards remain a global reference for vitivinicultural publications, it is also because of its constant adaptation to the evolutions in the wine and publishing sectors, and finally, also because of the multiplication and development of communication means. Thus, the OIV Awards during these 9 decades have seen the arrival of new categories known as popularization intended for a larger audience. We have received submissions from more than 50 producer and non-producing countries around the world. Today, as we enter the era of digitalization, we are rewarding for the first time several websites. The virtual ceremony proposed by OIV today is presenting the 2020 winners, their work for the dissemination of knowledge, their passion, and their commitment to the wine sector. I would like to wish you a very nice evening in their company. Good evening. For the 90th anniversary of the OIV Award ceremony. This is special from several points of view. First of all, it has allowed us to welcome our new scientific secretary, Richard Pfister. Without waiting anymore, Richard and myself are going to present the winners with a great deal of pleasure and attention. A great word of thanks to all of the players, the authors, and publishing houses. For the viticulture category, I'm happy to present 3 prizes. A prize which is in fact given to a Swiss author. This is the 3rd out of 4 prizes. We also have a prize which is given to a website and a special mention prize as well in this category, viticulture. The OIV Awards. Is a special moment this evening. We would like to thank you and accept this recognition. I would like to give the floor to Jean-Sébastien Reynard, the author of the book, who is a specialist in virology. He's going to say a few words about the contents and uniqueness of this part of the work. There is no sound. The interpreters are sorry, but the microphone is off.
Biologique sur la vigne. Il faut savoir.
This work is on the virology of the vine. You need to know here we have some 3 generations of researchers working on this subject, and they started at middle of the last century. Here, the work is on research that is then made available to wine professionals. I'd like to give the floor to Santiago. I was in charge of drafting the phytoplasma and bacterial portion of this work. I'm sure that you know that in the case of phytoplasmosis, one in particular is important, the flavescence dorée. This causes quite a few problems, including in Switzerland. Among the bacteria that are bringing new diseases to Europe, you have, for example, the Xylella bacterial complex. In this book, we also discuss other phytoplasmoses as well as other bacteria. Give the floor to Kate Gindra. Personally, I must say I was very proud and very honored to be able to illustrate the 3rd volume of the vine and to conceptualize in several cases some microscopic illustrations and electron microscopy. Since finally we are in a world that is infinitely small, I give the floor to Edme Rambaud-Necker. Why should you buy this book? Well, viruses, bacteria, and phytoplasmas are a key theme. And the second thing is that the illustrations are absolutely magnificent. And the third thing is that this is really an excellent compilation. As Mr. Scherer was saying, this is the subject of long research. It is the most up-to-date book on the subject. So there you have it. Thank you very much. And we are going to toast this to your collective help. Thank you, OIV, for this award.
Je coordonne le plan national dépérissement du vignoble.
So I coordinate an action plan against the declining vineyards. It is a plan that was launched at the initiative of the interbranch organizations, the wine industry, united around the CNIL and the Ministry of Agriculture. This was launched in 2016 in response to a problem of vineyard decline, which impacts productivity and longevity of the vineyard. It is, in fact, an ambitious plan. It is a national priority. It is organized around 4 ambitions, one around the theme of wine growers at the heart of the fight against dieback, another one around the research of plant material and observation of the vineyard. This web formation in part of the wine growers axis and is directed to all wine growers, technicians, and researchers for creating awareness of the problems of declining vineyards, but also so as to act with practical solutions for vineyards. It is developed around 4 modules to increase the awareness of the threat of declining vineyards, and it also aims to explain the issue of a systemic approach, since many factors are involved in travel, and we want to raise awareness on the complexity of the approach, but also the surveillance of vineyards, so that everything which relates to the detection of symptoms, to the recognition of symptoms, and last but not least, best practices. Finally, we want to have a diagnostic tool so that everyone can be situated on the scale of its exploitation. On the issues of dieback, there are interactive modules with motion design videos, with experiences of wine growers, of technicians, but there are also quizzes for each of the 20-minute modules. We ask a number of questions in order to make this more interactive, of course, but also so as to verify the progress in the training. And at the end of this course, they are awarded a certificate recognizing their training. Nowadays, we have more than 100 wine growers and technicians who have taken part in this web formation. We are preparing the next modules, which will integrate the results of the research work we are conducting within the framework of declining vineyards. What's next in this web training program? Well, 2 additional modules on subjects of research and the initial results of the work which has resulted from the 26 programs of research underway. For example, dealing with subjects such as virus infections, flavescence dorée, but we're also studying cutting problems of plant material, and techniques for medical imaging that will enable us to improve our knowledge of grafting and vine plants, and this will also look at the impact of drought on the decline of vineyards, so that all of this will involve all of the actors in the action plan against declining vineyards. It is a community of hundreds of research scientists, French, foreigners, and international. This recognition from the OIV Award acknowledges the work of the action plan, and it also acknowledges a new approach to online web training. This project was carried out with the help of the dieback plant team, Anastasia Roques, who is project manager, but also Caroline Prété, who helped us to carry out this web training. With this award, we hope the dissemination of this training will be multiplied in France and abroad.
Based on the ever more pressing needs, also due to climate change, Acknowledgement is in charge of the publishing of a scientific and a practical document about rootstock. It was written by involving the most important researchers like Attilio Scienza, Manna Crespo, Lucio Brancadoro, Osvaldo Failla, Giancarlo Moretti, and Francesco Anaclerian. The last book, which was published about the same subject, dates back 1958, that means more than 60 years ago. The physical and chemical composition of the different soil, together with the climate and the vine varietal, mean the root system the most suitable in order to achieve an excellent wine. On our book, we can find the 45 rootstock listed in the National Register, and other described in addition to some of those not inscribed from Eastern Europe. There is also a strong focus on the birth of new rootstock, just like the ones of Series M, deriving from new genotypes, which demonstrate to be highly resistant in arid and dry weather. The last chapter is about the grape growing farming, by which in the last year it was developing different propagation methods and improved the traditional ones. We are completely convinced to have commissioned a book which is useful to everyone: school, students, farmers, enologists, agronomists, and all wine lovers. Thank you very much.
Alors, dans la catégorie œnologie,
Now, in the enology category, I'm happy to note that there is a prize and a special mention. A prize on the wine analysis written by 7 authors, and a special mention for a Spanish work on the advances in grape and wine biotechnology.
The book on analytical chemistry in wine is, in fact, an update of a chapter of the former book edited by Würdig and Woller about wine chemistry. During the past 20, 30 years, the analytical techniques have changed dramatically, especially through the introduction of instrumental analysis in combination with data recording and data science. We decided to dedicate a whole separate book on the analytical possibilities and direct a special focus on the interpretation of data and results. Apart from the modern instrumental analysis, we also had decided to keep the classical, the so-called wet chemical or traditional methods in the book, so that the chemistry behind the analytical methods will not be forgotten. The book not only comprises method descriptions, but also the motivations and justifications behind the question, what do I analyze? What certain ingredients and what compounds should be analyzed, and what are the explanation for the values and the data and the results I get from it. And this is in terms of quality assessment or for the checks for legal or illegal production in winemaking, but also to check for the correct labeling, quality assurance, and wine authenticity. So in this regard, the authors and also the editors have benefited from their scientific experience over a long period and their long involvement in method application, in method harmonization and interpretation, and of course, international validation. In all these fields, the OIV has always played a very outstanding and central role. So consequently, there's a lot of reference done on the method compilation of the OIV. Personally, I have started within the OIV in 1990. I was at that time a scientist and analytical chemist and a German delegate in the subcommission of methods of analysis. This book is a kind of specific legacy. My thanks go to all the scientists being involved in that book, the Ulmer Verlag, who was presenting it, for their support. And what I can say is that we all feel extremely honored to receive the Grand Prix de l'OIV.
As a chemist who is interested in history of chemistry, I found a nice sentence about wine, saying that wine, it belongs to the most valuable gifts on earth. Wine requests love and respect. You can find these words on the law tables of Hammurabi about 3,700 years ago. Even at that time, the question of authenticity or adulteration of food and wine was interesting. Many analytical techniques which were developed over the years were tested and developed using wine as a complex medium to test the quality of analytical tools. This is also the reason why we used some classical analytical techniques and methods in the book. Nowadays, people are using sophisticated physical techniques, but we should not forget that so-called wet chemical techniques, we can say that adulteration is not a new thing. It's a very old problem. This is the reason why we also looked for these classical chemical techniques to see how the things have changed over the centuries. Adulteration is nowadays one of the biggest problems in the world on food and beverages. We try to contribute to authenticity studies of wine. And so it was a great pleasure for me to work together with the colleagues in this book.
We are really proud for this special mention for our book. I would like to acknowledge all the people who had worked a lot in this book. Especially, I would like to say that more than 60 researchers at world level have been working in advanced technologies in wine physiology, wine biotechnology, and many other topics. And the book have a lot of useful information for researchers, students, and winemakers. We are really happy with this award, and let me to introduce my colleague, Iris Loira.
Thank you for this award. We are very grateful to all our collaborators for their contribution to this book. One of the most important things for us is that this book is an open access. Everyone can access and can get the information. And there is also the possibility that the people can order a hard copy to have the physical book. Thank you very much.
Dans la catégorie économie vitivinicole, nous avons décerné deux.
In the vitivinicultural economy, we have two winners. We have marketing, in fact, luxury wine marketing, and marketing wine being the second book rewarded.
Thank you to the OIV for awarding our book, Luxury Wine Marketing, a special mention in the 2020 OIV Awards.
And I would also like to say thank you to the OIV International Jury, because I know they had to read lots of books. And so we feel very honored and grateful that our book was selected for an award.
A lot of people ask us why we wrote the book, Luxury Wine Marketing. And part of it started when I was working in luxury wineries in Napa and Sonoma and looking for resources on how selling wine was different for more commercial wines versus luxury wines. And there was nothing available. And so through studying for the WSC diploma, I learned about Dr. Liz Tosh, whose research is widely available, and there's so much good stuff out there that I contacted her at Sonoma State and said, have you done any research in this space?
And Peter's timing was excellent, because we had been receiving requests from other wineries in Napa and Sonoma to do this type of research. So Peter and I put our heads together and developed a plan. And over 4 years, we conducted a lot of research. We did literature reviews. We did interviews with luxury wine experts around the world. We did 2 big online surveys with luxury wine consumers who spent more than $100 a bottle for wine, trying to understand why they did this. And then we also developed a huge database of 8,500 luxury wines. And through all of this, then we were able to compile some of the key practices, best practices for luxury wine marketing.
And for me, the partnership of Liz and I together was really important. She pushed me really hard to improve a lot of the sections and chapters that I thought were already pretty good. But as I reflect on the entire book and think about what's important in the luxury wine world, this chapter that she wrote on story, which was very well done, is immensely important. Story and fine wine go hand in hand and are intricately tied. There's nothing more important than that.
We did find the luxury wine consumer has different motivations, and therefore different marketing tactics are required. We did get a lot of help and guidance from our publisher too, Invidious in Oxford, England, providing us with ideas on how we could tell these stories. And so the book was filled with examples of luxury wine experts around the world. So we really hope it's going to provide guidance and structure for other wineries who want to move into the luxury wine space.
Je tiens à mon tour à remercier les éditeurs pour la confiance qu'ils m'ont témoignée et aussi les lecteurs de mes livres. Bien sûr, remercier l'Organisation internationale de la vigne et du vin et les membres du jury pour avoir décerné une mention aussi honorable. J'ai travaillé.
Given me such a mention. I've worked for many years as an enologist. In fact, before starting my career as a professor at the university. At the same time, I have written up to 12 books today on wine. In fact, writing a book is a great pleasure for many reasons. There's, first of all, the joy of writing and to read and to communicate with others, to make money, to get recognition, and if we're lucky, to get an award. Now, this book, in fact, is written in Greek, and in fact, for wine trade, we have some subtitles that are taken from a film of Jean Renoir and from Bertolucci, The Strategy of the Spider. Selling wine meets a certain number of rules and strategy. There's a Spanish film by Almodovar, Also, it is a book that gives a personal experience around, in fact, the commercial dimension of wine, marketing with financial and accounting elements, management elements, and the recent history of wine in Greece. And all this from a social approach of wine, and as a result of the distinction that exists within a company. Thank you all. Oui, je voudrais vous remercier au nom de la maison d'édition, en fait, Philippe Sialos. En fait, notre maison d'édition s'est spécialisée aussi dans le domaine du vin. Nous avons des dizaines d'œuvres sur l'œnologie et je dois dire que nous espérons très bientôt écrire d'autres livres aussi intéressants que celui-ci.
Alors, dans la catégorie droit vitivinicole, j'ai le plaisir de vous annoncer
In the vitivinicultural category, we have 2 awards. We have wine trademarks designations of origin, and the other one is the new wine regulations in Europe.
Les livres collectifs que j'ai eu l'honneur de diriger.
Collective book I have directed has received the OIV Award in 2020. It is a collective work that brought together authors who worked for several months following a symposium held in 2017. Now, they decided to work, each of them on their specialty and in the country in which they work, that they know best, and to work on the complex relationships between designations of origin and wine brands. Now, it's an old question from a legal point of view, which concerns more and more the practice. It is true that the relations between designations of origin and wine brands is becoming more complex. Vitivinicultural brands, well, because one of the objectives of the book was to demonstrate that there are many specificities that concern the vitivinicultural sector in terms of brands and more generally speaking in the area of intellectual property. So I'm very happy to see this work that has been accomplished, and of course, to see this collective work getting this award. This distinction is a real honor.
Contains all the aspects of legislation that has been reformed in the last 3 years, both at European and national level, especially after the publication of a law, the so-called consolidated white text, which in Italy has greatly changed the regulatory system. We decided to propose a work that is easy to read and full of practical cases, in which the cornerstones of the wine legislation are very clearly explained from the most recent European regulations to national standards, clarifying the main changes that have been occurred in the last 2 years. This book will also be useful to students of viticulture, ecology, and agricultural sciences who have to move the world of great specialization, such as the enological one.
Thank you very much for this important award, the most important award that we have for all the winemaker in the world. For a long time, the world of wine has catalyzed knowledge and a wide range of skills that embrace all the production chain, from the vineyards to the stage of marketing and promotion. All the players in this production sector, whether they are winemaker or agronomists or technician of various types or producer, for example, are called to inquire more professionalism and to keep it through continuous updating and training.
For more than 18 years, Agricole has been dealing with books and magazines about agriculture and agri-food, and has therefore always had the opportunity to combine the typical topicality of magazines with the formative rigor of academic books to update professional and trained students. Indeed, the desire to give course to this book was born from this synergy between those who write for our magazines and the world of training and teaching in a time of deep and complex regulatory change, so articulated that is needed to organic structure that only a book can offer. We are proud as a publishing house that our joint effort has been able to achieve such prestigious recognition.
Dans la catégorie Histoire, le jury a décerné
History category, the jury has selected 3 winners. In fact, we have wines and spirits during the First World War. We also have a history of the Limoux vineyard and a special mention, in fact, in Argentina and Chile.
This collective book gathers 2 types of specialists in wine history, even champagne, spirits, and specialists in the history of the First World War by itself, like myself. This interlocking of specialists allows the book to be a rich collective production and to delve into several layers of activities during World War I. The first topics, of course, is the consumption by the army, which purchases almost the whole production of commonplace wines. For the soldiers, before starting to the front, and for the officers when they take some rest, sipping Grand Cru. The second layer is the rear front, that is the producers of wines, alcohol, spirits in the provinces not occupied by the German troops, like part of Champagne. And these producers had to leave without chemical products, had to be submitted to diseases, and sometimes the production fell down like in 1915. They have to deliver on the free market that is different from the army purchases, the wines and spirits which the people, the commonplace people, laborers in the rural areas, or mainly the industrial laborers, needed to resist the difficulties of intense industrial production. Therefore, there are so many levels in this book that it constitutes many levels, structured anyway, a book to discover how wine might be essential in Europe, because also British people, then American people from 1917 used to drink French wine, and how the alcohol, the wine, the spirits were determinant as some pieces of armaments, of day-to-day armaments for the corps, for the morale of the troops and of the civil populations. It's one of the originality of these collective books.
Ce livre décrit un terroir très ancien du
This
sud de la
book
France.
describes a very old terroir in the south of France and its main character, la Blanquette de Limoux. This white wine is a real star from the 16th century to today, almost 500 years. But the history of this wine was unknown, hidden by a legend spread in the interwar period. With my co-author, Georges Chalulot, we conducted an investigation in the archives and consulted thousands of documents to bring the story to light. So it is a research book, but it can be read like a novel, and it's full of anecdotes. The first mention of that wine dates back to 1544, and we see it's a luxury white wine reserved for privileged people, linked to celebrations, parties, or the carnival. The contemporary period is quite exciting. It is a period of change. It is also the heyday of this wine. It is exported, and it counts prestigious lovers like Thomas Jefferson, who ordered 600 bottles of Blanquette de Limoux. The story goes beyond the regional dimension. It delves into French society, and we wanted to describe the places, the modes of consumption of wine, the representations, and all the ideas related to wine. Now, I would like to acknowledge the work of our publisher, Lou Batière in Toulouse, who has done a fine job of highlighting the text with also splendid illustrations. This book can be also considered as a tool for wine growers of the Limoux. They are the heirs of a know-how and a long history and produce great wines on this terroir. Finally, our work has received the support of the Occitanie region, and it can be found in all bookshops.
This prize for how book is. This prize will bring public attention to the history of the vineyard of Languedoc and highlight our book as a work of reference. We are very grateful. J'aimerais vous souhaiter une bonne lecture et une excellente santé à tous.
Libro, digamos, lo que tiene
What's interesting in this book is that this is the first general history of viticulture in Latin America with an focus on two principal powers, Argentina and Chile, which have in fact cultivated 400,000 hectares of vineyard, and how the viticultural model has modeled the cultural landscape of the region. And indeed, we can look at the major religious works of defense in the fortifications of the Viceroyalty of Lima. And this is also true for the fortress of Callao, of the port of Buenos Aires, which was the capital of the Viceroyalty of Rio de la Plata. And you need to know it's also very important with the European immigrants arriving and the modern industry, which deployed, in fact, which was deployed from Europe, with the question of phylloxera. And there's also the two great industrial pearls that were emerging, how this built the collective identity of Chile, and why they focused on the Listan Prieto variety, which brought a great deal of identity to Chile, as well as the Cabernet Sauvignon, which today has such great success in the world markets for Chilean wines. Why Argentina has positioned itself with Malbec, because Malbec, in fact, was produced on a massive scale because it was more productive. And given that we were dealing with very poor people, poor farmers, it was better for them to develop the Malbec variety. On the other hand, in Chile, with the intervention of wine growers, the national upper class, which was able to, in fact, bring financing, they chose to develop and grow Cabernet Sauvignon. As a consequence, we have some 500 years of history to explain the deep roots of vitiviniculture in the southern cone of America. And this, little by little, with the intervention of different social players, this has developed the regional vitivinicultural industry of this area based on the reality of Argentina and Chile. So in the fine arts category, we have one prize and one special mention. One prize for France, major chords, virtuosos of music and wine. And then we have a special mention for a website, which is a virtual wine museum with a large number of paintings linked to this subject. The Fine Arts category, OIV Awards. Major chords, virtuosos of music and wine. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this award, which has truly surprised us and delighted us at the same time. It was the first time that we worked together to write a book. It's the first time we've competed for such a prestigious prize. Indeed, it was totally unexpected. And I must say that for a first work, we never thought we would go so far. I hope that this is just the beginning for us and that there will be other projects in the future that will be just as exciting and which will enable us to meet so many people as we have been able to do so to produce a book. Rapidly speaking, the book is a rather unique encounter, quite natural though, between wine and music. Having rubbed shoulders with a large number of these wine growers, we came to realize that behind the bottles and the barrels, they all had the same passion, one for music, one for playing that music with talent. So this is a story that we wanted to tell in this book with Nidal. We did this with both the pictures and the sound as well. We wanted to ensure that these universes, which are sometimes hidden, be penetrated. This work enabled us to discover people and to discover that behind their main activities, quote unquote, the one that we see, there was another facet to them. And this book reflects the image of both of us, because you know that Frédéric has been evolving in the wine world for some time, and I have been involved in the music world for some time. We'd like to start off by thanking our publisher, Le Particulier. I'd like to express special thanks to the 22 wine growers who appear in this book, because if they weren't there, if they hadn't said yes, there would be no book. I must say that the different people we talked to, the people who helped us to find these wine growers, we'd like to thank them. Also, thank those who, from the logistic point of view, enabled us to make these photos. At the beginning, we thought we were working towards a goal, but finally today we understand that it's perhaps the first stone towards something that's much more important. We've federated a lot of energy around this book, especially on the part of the wine growers. Today, they want to continue the adventure. And so for the launch of the book, we organized a concert with a number of them. And now we are working, in fact, on a project to produce a record in which the wine growers will come and each record a song, and then we will all be together. Thank you. When I was young, I used to spend my Sundays in the Paris museums. I've always been passionate about fine arts. This led me to the school benches of the École du Louvre. And more recently, I presented a memoir at Dijon and at the university on wine and its cultural environment. I decided to study how the artists, more particularly painters had staged wine in their works. Like chroniclers, I'm trying to see how much the history of wine and vine is very much linked to art from the social, economic, cultural, religious, and even political points of view. Here you have an illustration on the subject of drunkenness. In the 17th century, painting was the expression of the church's moral message. In this in this painting, you see a young man who's subjected to three major temptations of the time: gambling, wine, and lust. These were considered as vices and sin. In the 19th century, the abundance of cheap wine led to a devastation among the underprivileged classes. The first victims of the drunkard were his wife and children. In my research, I was surprised by the rich iconography that existed. It was then that I had the idea of creating a virtual museum. Today, this museum has 850 works of art. And while painting is dominant, other artistic forms have not been forgotten, like stained glass and mosaics, as well as other art forms like sculpture, photographs, etc. You have some works from 150 foreign museums from 25 countries. It is really an imaginary museum, but offers a new perspective on art. It is easy to visit such a museum. It is free, open access, and there is a lot of contextual commentary. This museum is aimed at enlightened amateurs as well as students in the public in general. It is bilingual in French and English. Zoe McNamee has done the translation.
In 2015 and been working together ever since. As I have a literary and historical background, I jumped at the chance to translate the virtual wine museum. Translating the museum was very rewarding, but it wasn't simple. The site is enormous, with dozens of galleries and hundreds of works of art. I had plenty to get my teeth into. Eric's original French commentary is both elegant and humorous, so conserving this in translation was an additional challenge. Knowing that my translations are opening the virtual wine museum to more people is very satisfying indeed.
Toute l'équipe, Catherine Delamare,
All of the team, Delamare, Anne Fribourg, Zoe McNamee, and myself would like to welcome you to our site, this site of the Virtual Wine Museum. It's not a site like others. It is an art site. In the category Discovery and Presenting Wines, the jury gave two prizes and a special mention. The first of these from France is the Essential Wine Growers Between Tradition and Innovation. It is interesting and fun to see how we also have a work on how do you put bubbles in wine, in champagne. And then we have a special mention for a Slovakian work on viticulture and gastronomy. This is a work which proposes, in fact, the first of these shows the techniques for producing wine. We see ampelography, recommendations, gastronomy, etc. I'd like to express warm thanks for this OIV prize, which really touches me because it's quite a reference in the wine world. Vigneron Essentiel is a long-term project. It's our first book and quite a special one, and thus the gestation period was quite long, more than 3 years with 10 countries, 4 continents, 2 hemispheres. This began when I met Georges Vernet, who's a wine grower who saved a grape variety and the Condrieu appellation in the 60s. The Vognier today represents several thousand hectares planted instead of the 16 when this gentleman who loved his job, who loved his wines, decided to save this grape variety and make it shine. I told myself that this period in which chefs are very popular, where people talk a lot about cooking and plenty of other things, where wine growers have a role to play in the transmission of pleasure literature, I saw that some wine growers did more than others. They had a necessary role for viticulture and vinification. They are fighting for the defense of their appellations. I think we've talked a great deal about wine regions and appellations, but relatively little about the persons hidden behind the labels, and even less of those who have done a little more than the others. This was the objective of this book. Lots of different profiles in the book. There are truly powerful stories that sometimes make you smile, cry. Some are funny, some are sad, and I always think it's powerful. That's what we wanted to transmit in this book with a great photographer, Leif Carlson, who, so the book is both written and visual, more than 350 photos, which are all very powerful and which, in my opinion, have captured the central dimension of the profile of the 26 wine growers that we saw.
I get the question, do you like wine? Yeah, I really like wine, but actually what I really prefer about this job that I'm doing is meeting the people who make the wine. This book has been a long succession of meeting the absolutely incredible people in almost around the world. It's been very, very rich in experiences of these meetings. Obviously, the landscapes, the places where we've been going as is equally important and has been a very rich experience as a photographer. But it's really the personalities, meeting those people, that has been the most enjoyable part of this whole project.
Nous vous présentons le livre Comment mettons les bulles.
That the book is titled How Do We Put the Bubbles in Champagne? Why the title? Because this is the question that tourists ask when they visit our region. After 38 years spent in the Champagne Committee, I had the intention to write a book which explained the production method as well as all of the aspects of the champagne production process, from the vineyard, the terroir, the technical history, but also the different styles of champagne. Now, this book might appear funny when you look at the cover, but in fact, this is a very technical book. It is also illustrated thanks to the talent of Florent Imbert, who is a young artist, graphist, who's a friend of my son. I've been drawing since I was very young. So for the last 10 years, I've been working in parallel in the vineyards. I'm a Champenois wine grower, and this has allowed me to discover the job from A to Z. But at the same time, I wanted to work on this topic. And this led me to meet Michel and come with him on this work. I was able to place my drawings, my sketches to highlight the text that Michel has drafted. And I must say that this meeting has allowed us to make a highly comprehensive book on the subject. The book is very simple to read because it's divided up into chapters and they can be read individually, piece by piece. It has also been translated into English. And at the present time, we are preparing a second volume, which will deal with how to drink champagne. For the moment, we only have the title. Not tonight, I have an aperitif with champagne. So enjoy the first volume and enjoy a wine tasting session of champagne. Thank you.
Alors, dans la catégorie vins et territoires.
So, in the category wines and territories, 3 awards: a first prize for an English work dealing with the wines of Eastern Europe, a second prize, wines of the French Alps, and a special mention for a Swedish work, a first work to present the Swedish wine, a wine world that is growing.
I'm very honoured to have received the OIV Award for this book, which has been a reflection of my whole career in wine, really, because I started in wine about the time the Iron Curtain was falling and at the beginning of the new era for these countries in Eastern Europe. And I started buying wine from these countries at the beginning of the new era. So I feel very close to them. I feel I've grown up with them. And along the way, I've made many, many friends in wine. And I wanted to share in the book some of the amazing personal stories that I've come across. I wanted to talk about how these three countries have moved on from a very collectivized industry in the previous era and undergone a complete revolution in winemaking to where they are today, but also to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for them. I wanted also to create a little bit of a reference book and a textbook, because I realised that there actually isn't anything in English written by anybody from an outside perspective on these countries, and say the fascinating personal stories of some of the amazing people I've met along the way. And as to who to thank, I mean, it's just so many winemakers and wineries have spared their time and opened bottles for me and opened their hearts and told me their stories along the way. Of course, my family for putting up with my numerous absences. Of course, Richard Burton as well for having the opportunity with Infinite Ideas to actually tell this story. So, Norok, Nazdrave, cheers, and thank you so much for the award.
Congratulations to Carolyn for winning this award. It's a great book. The Classic Wine Library goes back about 60 or 70 years, but in this incarnation under Infinite Ideas, it's been going for about, since I think we published our first book in 2012, which was Richard Mason's book on port, which had previously been published, and we published a new edition of it. We've now got about 30 titles, 30 wine titles in print and in ebook format, and about 12 under contract, and a hit list of about 20 more titles that we want to find authors for. So if there are any budding authors out there, we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Wines of the French Alps highlights the small wine region of Savoie and its neighbouring even smaller regions of Bugey and Isère, each one offering highly individual mountain wines. I'm a skier and I have been lucky enough to own a base in the French Alps for many years, hence my interest. Once I also discovered the tiny Hautes-Alpes region, which has the highest vineyards in the French Alps, has a few dedicated vignerons and a couple of rare grapes growing there too, I went further south. And I included also the Diois, whose Claret de Die vineyards are also high on the foothills of the Pre-Alps. It shares with Bugey-Cerdon the use of the méthode ancestrale sparkling technique. The book relates everything from the history through the vineyard and wine technical details to the producers, not forgetting tips for visitors to the regions, including a taste of the famous Alpine cheeses. Three key threads run through the book: the impressive number of indigenous, often extremely rare grape varieties, the recent revival of steep vineyard slopes, and of course, a growing band of dedicated vignerons. After years of Savoie wines being condemned as wine just to drink on a ski holiday, today, after huge improvements made in the farming and the winemaking, the best examples are sought out by importers from around the world. The time seemed just right for these wines, which offer lightness and freshness, increasingly hard to find in our warming climate. While there are plenty of my words to read for wine students and amateurs alike, these are illustrated by more than 200 photographs, principally taken by my professional wine photographer, Mick Rock, of CFAS Picture Library in London. Other photographers included Jura-based Jérôme Genet and my late partner and traveling companion, Brett Jones. I'm very grateful to all of them. Also important are the super useful, especially commissioned maps made by Quentin Sadler. I self-published the book and I used crowdfunding to help obtain advanced funds and sales. I already had a following through my first award-winning book, Jura Wine, and so this book was backed by people from over 30 countries. It helped me hugely that they were very supportive and encouraging during my partner's difficult final illness, which delayed publication. I sell the book direct from my website and ship it worldwide, although I of course welcome wholesale orders from bookshops and wine shops. I am so very honoured that the OIV has chosen Wines of the French Alps for this award, which also acknowledges the hard work put in by my whole team.
I'm the author of the book Svenskt vin, en vinvärld som växer, Swedish wine, a wine world that is growing. As we know, the wine world is growing all the time, and it has never been that fun to be a wine lover than it is just right now. That is because of the amount of grapes and the diversity of wines that are available for us. Swedish winemakers has just about 10 to 15 vintages in their backpack, and they're still learning, exploring and experimenting with grapes and how to make even better wines. I've served Swedish wines for almost a decade now at the restaurant where I work, many thousands of guests, and the first impression is always very positive. The book I've written is a book of inspiration. I hope it will be an eye-opener for people to discover the Swedish wines, because not everybody in Sweden even knows that we have a wine production. It's a rather uncomplicated book, and it turns to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're interested in wine or not, and that's also because of the beautiful pictures in the book that are taken by a photographer, Marielle Stensson. Thank you very much, Marielle, for lifting the book. I would also like to point a big thank to my editor, Joanna Björkqvist, that taught me a lot of things during the writing process. And of course, a very big thanks to the Idus book publisher and Ulrika Slottner that believed in me. And if you're interested in the book, it's on their website, www.idusforlag.se. A big thank to the jury of OIV.
Dans la catégorie monographie et études spécialisées,
Monographs and specialized studies category. Now, in this category, we have a winner. We have the winner for, in fact, Clos, a wine heritage in the intimacy of 27 Clos, and also an Italian work on vermouth.
Clos, c'est dans le monde du vin une parcelle de vigne qui est entourée soit d'un mur en pierre sèche, soit d'une haie végétale, soit d'une barrière naturelle. Nous, on s'est intéressé pour le livre Clos à ceux qui étaient entourés par des murs en pierre sèche. Pourquoi? Parce qu'historiquement, c'est des parcelles qui datent du Moyen-Âge et qu'utilisaient les prêtres, les moines et les curés pour produire leur vin de messe au départ. S'ils ont protégé ces parcelles autrefois en y construisant des murs, c'était pour éviter que les gens volent le raisin, pour éviter aussi que les animaux ne piétinent la vigne et pour éviter qu'un cavalier ne puisse passer avec sa monture. S'ils ont pris la peine, encore une fois, de construire ces murs à ces endroits précis, c'est qu'ils y avaient senti une certaine fécondité de la terre. C'était d'ailleurs, avant d'être de la vigne, des potagers. Ils se sont aperçus que leur potager à ces endroits-là était plus florissant qu'à d'autres endroits. Ce qu'on a découvert à un moment dans les recherches, et c'est ça qui est intéressant, c'est que les églises, les chapelles et cathédrales en France, comme ailleurs d'ailleurs, comme les pyramides en Égypte, elles ont été construites à des endroits où il y avait des énergies dans le sol qu'on ne retrouvait pas ailleurs. Moi, ce que je pense aussi, c'est que s'ils ont pris le temps de construire ces murs autour de ces parcelles, c'est qu'ils voulaient les chérir d'une autre manière. Je suis persuadé que la pierre qui entoure la vigne, elle transmet un héritage historique et elle transmet aussi des pages de notre histoire à la vigne. Elle transmet un message divin, entre guillemets, à la vigne. Tous les symboles qui entourent ces clos, donc parfois le clocher, la croix, le mur, accentuent aussi la dimension spirituelle et transmet un message divin à la vigne.
And transmit a historical heritage and also some pages of our history in the vineyard. They transmit a divine message to the vine. All the symbols surrounding these clous, sometimes the bell tower, the cross, the wall, also emphasize the spiritual dimension and deliver a divine message to the vine. The relationship between the wine grower working with these walls in the care he provides. I wanted to come back on the way the three of us have worked. Benjamin came to see the Édition de la Martinière, and in fact, we were very interested in his topic, the topic was really, in fact, special. And he had Benjamin with him, a photographer, mainly working in the area of architecture, but who, in fact, became a great photographer in this field, maybe because of his architectural background. He saw these plots from the point of view of an architecture. So he did a great work here. We visited the Clos for something like 1 year in Champagne, in Alsace, in Burgundy, another one in Côte-Rouennaise and in the Bordeaux region, and in the Loire region with Vouvray, around Saumur, and even in the Jura. Almost all the French vineyards are represented. We often spent a whole day with the wine growers to understand their love for their clos. Benjamin brought what he had just mentioned, and in fact, he writes with his soul in a way. He writes the way he actually feels the wines. In fact, what I had read from the author is something that I actually tasted when I actually drank the wine. Now, we also try to describe to make portraits of these people working in these clos. Now, it's a book that you read very slowly, that you come back to on a regular basis to really understand the vitivinicultural world and the differences between the different terroirs we have in France.
C'est un grand honneur pour nous de recevoir
It's a great honor for us to receive this prestigious OIV Award for our book, Vermouth in Torino. Vermouth di Torino is the only Italian geographical indication recognized for an aromatized wine. We had to present this unique aspect to show the special connection between history, tradition, and geography, and to explain the technical aspects, the tasting methods, the complex and skillful blending of exotic plants and aromatic herbs, and many other elements. Now, this book was born from a dream, from the desire to present to everyone the reasons for the great historical development of this geographical indication, Vermouth di Torino, and to present the specific characteristics that have led to its recognition as the first and, for the moment, the only Italian geographical indication of an aromatized wine. That's why we have brought together a pool of the best experts to present all the aspects shaping the identity of the Vermouth di Torino. Pier Stefano Berta and I, as an historian of the vine and wine for over 30 years, have followed the stages from the birth of this product in 1700 in the workshops of the famous liquorist of Turin to its subsequent success on the international markets. Now its charm and peculiarity are linked to the use of dozens of exotic spices and aromatic plants. In our book, you can see beautiful pictures and expert explanations of their properties and botanical characteristics, as well as the tradition of their cultivation and use. Such as wormwood, but also vanilla. A lot of research work was done in the field of history, of course, but also in the area of sensory analysis by creating the first dedicated tasting sheet. For the first time, the different species of Artemisia used in vermouth were presented with a description and a presentation of the method of cultivation. And you find a lot of technical, scientific aspects, but also anecdotes and historical aspects. Now, this book is truly the Bible of Vermouth di Torino. The book allows you to take part in what we traditionally called in Turin, l'ora del vermouth, the moment for vermouth in the evening when everyone used to meet for an aperitif. But from Turin onwards, the rite of aperitif with Vermouth di Torino became an international social phenomenon. Its success was supported by a large publicity operation. In the book, you can see many historical labels and famous posters made by great creative names. And also you can see how Vermouth di Torino has become a real cocktail. Now, at this stage, we would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributed. Now, in the category Symposia Proceedings, there's one winner, which is wine and gastronomy interbreed looks, and a special mention, wine when women get involved.
Donc cette présentation à deux pour remercier.
Now, we would like to thank OIV for having awarded this prize. It's in fact recognizing a book published at the Édition Universitaire de Dijon. It's rather an innovative work. It's the result of a conference on gastronomy and wine that we organized with the UNESCO Chair, Culture and Wine Traditions. We called it Regard Croisé in the context of the implementation of the Cité Internationale de la Gastronomie et du Vin in Dijon. This book, in fact, used a multidisciplinary approach. You have many authors with a geographical background, historical background, semiology, information and communication, who have taken part in the work. The introduction was written by Jean-Robert Pitt, president of the French Mission of the Heritage and Food Cultures. Now, so you have the multidisciplinary aspect, but also we also have an international approach. Dealing with gastronomy and wine is a subject which is very French in a way, but we really wanted to move it to a global level. So you have authors who deal with the link between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem in Israel in their relationship to gastronomy, to wines. You have texts on bistronomy and wine in London. Now, it is a work that deals with gastronomy and wine on the long time since it begins with the Middle Ages. You have authors that look at the relation between gastronomy and wine in the Middle Ages, and texts that will question this notion of gastronome, this notion that comes about at the end of the 18th century or an early 19th. And we follow the evolution. We also look at all the transformations, and we look at this strong link between gastronomy and wine that we can also see through œnotourism. Now, we hope that many people will read the book. We hope it will be read by all those who like wine and gastronomy. In fact, we were to have a conference on a theme that was close to gastronomy and wine, but of course it has been postponed to better days, and we hope that these better days will come very soon. Now, we wish to express our deep gratitude to the members of the jury who have given us the honor of this award. You recognize the importance of the role of women in the world of wine and the value of their work in the different consumption areas and producing areas. The idea was to deal with wine from a cultural point of view. Now, human and social sciences are also important in this area, but make it possible to have a multicultural approach. And we have seen this cultural dimension of wine. We saw that there were some common points in the different countries. Our study shows that until 1960s, women were excluded from the world of wine because of traditional societies. They were not legitimate and they didn't have the know-how. And the very idea for them to consume wine was not accepted either. Now, women occupy today an important place in all sectors: wine growing, winemaking, enology, trade, marketing, and communication. Access to viticultural studies make it possible for a growing number of women to produce excellent wines and to innovate. In some countries, women wine growers have been pioneers in biodynamic wine, in œnotourism, in the conception of wine as a cultural product. In all cultures taken into account, women drink wine. In fact, Chinese, Japanese, Russian have become driving force of consumption. Drinking wine for them represents modernity and an opening to Western culture. The testimonies of these women, enologists, wine growers, chateau owners, have brought a real anchorage in reality to the work. Some share with us their difficulties to be recognized, but others refused to imagine that gender has an importance in this area. The younger generations claim a feminist approach and assume the difficulties of carrying out their personal life and professional life at the same time, while others, in fact, rely on a universal professionalism, even if they need sometimes to sacrifice their private lives, like men do. We have collected, in fact, from Sylvie Caz or Liliane Barton-Sartorius, co-owner of several chateaux, Grand Cru Classé, but also Alix Ounis, director of the Chateau Smith Lafitte. We also have others who are members of the board of the Conseil Supérieur de l'Œnotourisme. They're all involved in women's associations and networks like the Women in Wine or les L'Aliénor d'Aquitaine. Now, we really encourage you to read this book. It is available online on all the traditional platforms, but also it is available as a book. And in fact, it is the Presse Universitaire de Bordeaux who have published the work.
In the encyclopedic manual category, an OIV prize has been attributed to Sommellerie de Référence, which is a manual on sommellerie. For me, This award is a consecration of a very long career dedicated to the fabulous world of vine and wine and its teachings. Following my studies, I worked for 20 years in the restaurant business. It was during this time that I obtained the title of Best Sommelier in France. Following this title, I was selected to represent France in the first competition for the best sommelier in the world in Brussels in 1969. At the time, for these competitions, candidates had a real problem. There were very few books at the time on wines, and especially concerning world wines, nothing on sommellerie. Luckily for me, in 1965, I had the OIV memento, which allowed me to have information, among other things, the USSR's wines at the time. And so at the end of the 1980s, when I'd left the restaurant activity for teaching, I was contacted by Dominique Loison to write a book for the hotel management schools and restaurant business. I wrote the book, The Wine and Wines in the Restaurant, a book that I would have liked to have when I started working in the restaurant business, but especially at the time I was preparing the sommelier competition. Since then, the book has been republished and updated. In the meantime, Mr. Loiseau asked me to write a book on the wines of the world. When it came out, I was criticized. How is this? A Frenchman who's writing a book about the wines of the world, as if we did not have enough wines in France. At the time, I had to explain that France was not alone on the planet. Since then, thank God, things have evolved. The new managers of the BPI Publishing House have suggested that I combine the works, which have already sold more than 130,000 copies. This has resulted in the beautiful baby you see next to me, with some 750 pages and more than 1,200 illustrations. The objective of the book is to have an answer for questions raised by professionals, but also for all wine lovers. It covers all of the stages from wine to the table, tasting, storage, and marketing. For each country, you have more than 60 countries highlighted. In fact, you see the history and importance of wine, the geographic situation, legislation, I insist, recent legislation, vine population, and the pairing of wine and meals. You have other chapters on spirits and other beverages. You also have the explanation of why you have a Saint Sophia Clos in Japan, or why in South Africa several wineries have French names. I'd like to pay tribute here to my editors and to their teams, because a book is not just the work of an author. Congratulations and all of my thanks to the OIV, which is celebrating the 90th anniversary of the OIV Awards. I'm very proud to have obtained this award. Thank you. In the sustainable vitiviniculture category, we have 3 awards. A first prize for South Africa for the preparation and the soil preparation for sustainable wine and table grape vineyards. We have a prize for the social sustainability in the global wine industry, concepts and case. And you have a special mention concerning the companion plants, the vine and its companion plants. Soil preparation for sustainable wine and table grape vineyards.
It's really a big honor to receive this OIV award. I think it's also a tribute to all the researchers who did research for many years, and also a tribute to the wine and table grape industries of South Africa, without whom this book would not have been possible, and also our sponsor, Villa. We actually brought together all the knowledge, practical and theoretical knowledge that has been accumulated in South Africa over the past 100 years. The book is all about how to create a favorable environment for the root system. It's all about things that you can do before planting. In South Africa, for instance, our soils are very compact. And that compaction must be removed because it restricts root penetration. We discuss methods of how to measure the compaction in the soil, for instance, by using a penetrometer. One chapter is dedicated to root distribution, root studies, and even root pruning. It's a chapter on special structures, for instance, how to make terraces in a cheap way, how to reach the soil on shallow soils, what techniques to use. And then a portion or a section on plant holes. Then we have a chapter on drainage, but I think a large portion of the book is also dedicated to methods of how to alleviate soil compaction.
There's a lot about implements, how to use the implements, and most of the implements were designed locally, specifically for the different conditions that we experience in our soils. There's all sorts of different types of implements with illustrations of how to use that. We use that in class as a textbook for the students over the past 20 years that I'm busy teaching the course on soil preparation. So for example, you have a soil that's made up of mixed layers, clay, salt, sand, and you have poor water infiltration. Then we have a special type of implement that we designed that we call the 12 plow or a 12 shift plow, used to mix it and create a better soil. There's even implements that we can use to incorporate phosphorus or lime before planting. There's different modifications on different types of implements that we created over the years in South Africa. There's very good photos incorporated in the book, which shows you the effect of that type of implement. Anybody that wants to buy the book, you can just visit Amazon's books.
This book came about from discussions between the co-editors. Both Sharon and Armand have done quite a bit of research in the wine space, and across all three of us, we've done a lot of research around sustainability. But our primary focus has been around environmental sustainability in the past, particularly Sharon and myself. And we saw a real need to fill a gap and to address social sustainability, particularly in the global wine industry. So our book covers lots of regions around the world, from New Zealand and Australia on this side of the world, South Africa, the US, South America, and then a number of European countries as well. So a really global perspective on wine. We cover a number of topics, including philanthropy, poverty, natural disasters. We also have a focus on communication and reporting, and a focus there on wine tourism as well. So hopefully a little bit of social sustainability flavour for everyone. We've pitched the book at a wide range of audiences, and we hope that you'll all see something of value in the book.
We're currently using this book as a textbook in our Global Wine Executive MBA program and other programs. We hope will soon adopt this text as well. Most of the research and textbooks related to wine or wine business management have been about the impact of society on wineries. In other words, how society changes impacts winery production and marketing decisions. This book turns that whole impact on its head. It's all about how wineries impact society, both positively and negatively. It gives readers a chance to learn about how wineries are coping with current societal challenges and how they're helping society overcome those challenges. We really hope you'll take a look at our book and consider using it not just in the classroom, but also using it with your staff and employees if you're working in the wine or hospitality or beverage industry, because the topics cover and span many aspects of the industries in which you compete.
So from a publisher's perspective, there were a lot of things that made this book attractive to us. One thing is that our wine books that we've published previously have performed well for us, and they draw a lot of interest from our customers. Another is sustainability is a focus for us particularly the Sustainable Development Goals. Social sustainability is a neglected area on our list. Most of our books on sustainability focused on the environmental aspects, so we felt that this book would fill a gap and make an original contribution.
Nous avons écrit ce livre.
When we wrote this book, my daughter and I, we wrote it because we have always been fascinated by the vine and the development that has occurred over its long history was accompanied by a large quantity of plants. This is something which is quite unique when you look at all of the other major crops like tea, for example, or vanilla, which is very popular and a very sophisticated crop. They need a creeper and they need shade and a support. And no plant has needed more companion plants than the vine. This was the trigger for a rather unique companionship history of the vine. And this is something you find wherever vines grow. It's for the same reasons that we speak of a culture which needs crops, a crop which needs tutors. It is the married vine of antiquity, and the vine has its stakes. Finally, we can say that a whole economy is needed in the plots of the vineyard, and that this accompanies the family economy, whether it's the useful trees, fruit trees, trees to make barrels, trees to make sophisticated enology, and obviously the trees which are necessary for the presses. All of this is linked to the vine. There are some extremely striking episodes of the introduction of the vine and fruit trees, which together lead to a successful fruit horticulture. With the Romans, the vine came with fruit trees that we didn't even know before. For example, apple trees, walnut trees, mulberry trees, fig trees, and peach trees, of course, which I almost forgot. So all of these fruit trees, in fact, have accompanied the vine, and they have created the fruit growing industry. The last very striking companionship that we can indicate here is the one that brought the American vines to the rescue of the European vines and which have provided them with roots. So here we move to a truly astonishing companionship, a very long, rich, and with a great future in terms of the return of biodiversity in the vines. We see here that that vitivinicultural landscapes have in fact lost all of their diversity and have become very simple. We refer to it as the Sea of Vines. This book starts with a historical perspective and how plants which are companions of the vine. We propose a new plantscape where we plant and some ideas for wine growers and winemakers, people who live in these viticultural landscapes, and how they can bring to these landscapes an enhanced biodiversity to enhance sustainable viticulture. In the large technical publication category, there is a prize to a website, an international website, which exists in 6 languages. It is the 3rd site which was given an award. It's the OIV's Technical Reviews Vine and Wine site web.
When we first launched a No1 scientific journal in 2016, OIV's Technical Reviews was only a dream, as it was a demand of the main partners, private partners of the project, to transfer the scientific knowledge in synthetic technical papers and users such as winemakers. Today, I think we can very proud to have launched OIV's Technical Reviews in full open access. That means that nobody has to pay for it. Nobody pay for submitting the papers and nobody pays for reading the papers. That was the main goal of our OIV's project. We are really honored to receive this OIV award, and I would like to thank all the partners, academic partners, research centers, universities, and also all the private partners which help us with financial support and technical support to get this project successful.
We are very pleased that our efforts to create this unique open access journal are being recognized. We will continue to make freely available high quality content on topics of interest for our readers in their native languages that are English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. Another thing that makes our journal unique is that each article published is previously reviewed by a researcher and a professional from the industry, and all of them members of our editorial board. Thank you to our contributing authors that are top scientists or very high-level technicians. Nothing would be possible without you. Please continue to send us very good quality articles.
I'm very grateful to be the editor of OIV's technical reviews, and we have a wonderful team. I'm ably helped by Julien Dumerc, and we have put together a really knowledgeable and diligent editorial team made up of both industry reviewers and practitioners and academic experts. And they do a wonderful job in terms of reviewing our articles and making them ready for the practitioners, which is a key goal of technical reviews. I'd also like to thank the institutes and the people that actually allow our contributors and editors to put time into this work on a pro bono basis. It is very much appreciated.
I'm the newest part of this journal, and it's I believe that it's a promising project that involves different partners, the research groups and universities that they produce the knowledge, and the industry that is interesting to use this knowledge. So this matches, it's quite unique and make this journal unique. I would like to thank OIV that recognize this try that we make. And I hope that this long trip that is just started, it could be useful for both the people that produce knowledge and the people that need in the industry to take this knowledge and use it to make a good, better project.
Voici, nous arrivons à notre dernière catégorie.
We come now to the last category. So a special category for the second time in fact, 90 years. We recognize, in fact, publishing house. We recognize in this on this occasion 4 publishing houses. We acknowledge them. So, Édition Amtra, Switzerland, the Ferret Édition in France, and Édition de la Martinière, France, and the Ulmer publishing house. So, in fact, we would like to thank them for what they do for our sector. So we are coming to the end of this ceremony, and it was my first, in fact, time as the moderator. So I wanted to thank everyone for their attention. I would like to thank Azelina also, and Natalie for the hard work done. And now I would like to invite the winners in our publishing edition, in fact, to join us. Now, you know that we are going to have a toast together. You have, in fact, to press on the hand icon. But before all this, I would like to give the floor to Mrs. van der Linde, the president of OIV, who is going to say a few closing words. Now, thank you for honoring the AMTRA editions, Association, in fact, for the Enhancement of the Works of the Agronomic Research. It has its origin at the end of the 19th century, since Switzerland, like other countries, have experienced the dramatic phytosanitary crisis with phylloxera mildew, powdery mildew. In fact, the name became AMTRA in the 70s. Now, you see here the different books on vine. Book 1 is about the fungal diseases. Then we have pests, viruses, bacteria, and phytoplasma. So the different problems faced by vine. As you see, we have phenological tables for schools, for people, and for different crops, but also fruit trees like apple, pear trees. And we publish in French, German, and Italian. We also publish a review 6 times per year, which is a review for viticulture and other fruit trees, special crops. And we also cover special topics. For example, the selection of vines at Agroscope, the latest varieties. In fact, sometimes a special edition. There was one on Chasselas, a publication like a handbook on the main vine varieties grown in Switzerland. So this is used in the viticulture schools, and textbooks that are updated on a regular basis in arboriculture and viticulture. And we have, for example, this winter, we got information to publish a new data sheet on wood disease and black rot. And so we're lucky to have the latest knowledge available, and we can put that knowledge at the disposal of wineries and the practitioners who need it. So a very easy to handle publication, many pictures, excellent pictures, in fact, to show the different symptoms. The Éditions Ferret is a well-established publishing house. It exists since 1812. We are specialized in viti and vini work, but we're best known for a guide published, in fact, every 6 years on Bordeaux and its wines. It's in 2014, we released the 19th edition. For the 20th, in fact, we want to digitize the data of this guide to make it accessible and provide services to owners, traders, and all the actors in Bordeaux. Now, this year we decided to publish a comic book It's called Couleur Vigne. It talks about the daily life of wine growers. It is a bit like a novel, and you also have watercolors. The author, Nicolas Le Saint, comes from the Bordeaux region. He's the chief operating officer of Château de Reignac. A beautiful adventure that goes on. Ferré follows the Bordeaux and has followed Bordeaux for 200 years. Now we have new projects together. And we hope this cooperation will go on for the coming 200 years. Today, I'm the spokesperson of La Martinière. We wanted to say that we're very proud that the Édition de La Martinière was rewarded 3 times this year. First of all, for the awards granted to the 2 works published at the end of 2019, the wonderful book on the Clos from Benjamin Darrow, Philippe Toinard, and the photographer Thibaut Voisin, as well as the beautiful book Vigneron Essentiel by Jérémy Kuckerman and the photographer Liv Carlson. These 2 books, in fact, receive very positive comments in the press and in the bookshops. We're also proud of the award granted to our publishing house by the OIV Jury. Now, in fact, we have for 20 years produced beautiful books on wine. All these projects allow us to discover wonderful classified or Grand Cru and other wines. In 2001, we had a very nice book with Chateau Smith au Lafitte à Réville, 2002 Chateau Pichon Longueville, Comtesse de Lalande, and Chateau La Louvière, Chateau Angélus, Chateau Cantemel. Wonderful vintages which all make us dream, but also several beautiful books with the Association of Classified Growth, the Heart of Bordeaux with the Association of the Classified Growth of Graves, Great Growth, Great Starred Chefs with the Conseil des Crus Classés de 1855, rewarded by the OIV, and I was there. The Spirit of Wines with l'Esprit des Vins Crus Classés de Saint-Émilion, Jane Anson, Eric Baumard, Michel Béthane, Jérémy Kuckerman. And we would like to dedicate this award to all our authors, photographers, and editors that make these beautiful works exist.
Publishing house Eugen
Ulmer is
very proud that such an incredible work is published in our house. The standard work Würdig Wolle, Chemie des Weines was the predecessor of the Analytik des Weines, as Mr. Witkowski mentioned. It was a commendable handbook for generations of winemakers, but it was also getting on in years. And since about 2010, it was relatively out of print. Then a great decision for a publishing house took place. What shall we do with such an important case? Will we take the risk of a new edition? In times of electronic publishing of scientific journals and papers and ebooks, will we invest 5 or 4 years for a new edition? Our house thinks that our job is to make such handbooks. We understand our daily work as serving science. We do this since 1880, and that is always true nowadays. But the production does not take place 4 or 5 years. It really took almost 15 years since we have the new edition. But it was a good decision. The team of the authors decided to divide the analytic out of the chemie, where it had only 1 chapter. And they invented a new independent book, which we have now in front of us and which is getting the OIV Award. I love to say thank you to Mr. Witkowski, to Mr. Dietrich, and to Mr. Otteneder, who took the long run in writing such an scientifically high-grade book. Collaboration was good and intensive the whole time. And as I heard that they will receive the prize, I was very happy because I know what they achieved. A very big thank you for all of them from the publishing house Eugen Ullmann.
Bonsoir, chers amis.
Good evening, dear friends. I must say that I have shared with you this 2020 awards ceremony, and I must say I was proud and moved. I listened with great admiration. The winners talk about their work. Thanks to you, winners, the OIV Awards remain the world reference for wine and wine publications 90 years after their creation. Authors, photographers, illustrators, computer graphics designers, web designers, publishing houses. Together, we will continue to promote the culture of wine to the widest audience by offering to scientists, teachers, wine lovers, neophytes, a wide choice of subjects treated with the greatest rigor and precision. The history of the OIV Awards is on its way to its centennial edition. All OIV member states or non-member countries can contribute to enrich this beautiful story by presenting publications in all languages. The defense of the interest in this sector is an international concern. To all the countries represented over the last 90 years, I would like to thank you all. Please go on, in fact, representing our sector through the work of your authors. To all countries that have not yet participated, we encourage you to participate. I wish you a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and I hope that 2021 will be the end of the pandemics. So hope to see you soon, and cheers to you all and to Vine and Wine. Thank you.
Hello from Puglia.
Merci pour cette belle initiative et nous sommes très émus.
Thank you for this great initiative, and we are very moved to have received this award, and we would like to dedicate the book on women involved to all women. So have a very Merry Christmas.
Prochaine, le 2021, de brindé physiquement tous ensemble.
We hope that in 2021 we will be able to have a drink all together on this same occasion, but physically.
So, for the Slovak authors, I would like to thank all organizers for the really nice event, and stay healthy, stay responsible, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much from OIV. A big thanks from Puglia, the ancient Magna Graecia, where probably the actually enology start. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Salute.
Everyone, Norok, na zdravé, and cheers.